Please remain standing if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Please retire the colors. Good morning. Welcome to the 2023 Franklin D. Roosevelt Four Freedoms Awards. I am Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, and I chair the wonderful board of the Roosevelt Institute. We are honored by your presence today. One of the special things about these awards is that we partner with the Roosevelt Foundation of the Netherlands to recognize democracy heroes around the world and here in the United States. As many of you know, the Roosevelt family traces its roots back to the early Dutch immigrants from Zeeland to New York, which was originally a Dutch colony known as New Netherlands in the 17th century. We are honored by this partnership, established 41 years ago, and welcome the delegation from the Netherlands, led by Han Polman, King's Commissioner for the Province of Zeeland and Chair of the Roosevelt Foundation. Among this distinguished delegation, I would like to recognize the Honorable Birgitte Tazelaar, the Netherlands Ambassador to the United States, Wilfred Nielen and Johannes Annes de Baat, Regional Ministers of Zeeland, the Honorable Marlene Schiebers, Mayor of Tolen, which is, some think, the hometown of the Roosevelts, the Honorable Gerben Dijksterhuis, Mayor of Borsele, and our great friend, Harold Bergman, Mayor of Middelburg. Additionally, we are so pleased to welcome some of our elected officials: U.S. Representative Pat Ryan, New York State Senator Michelle Hinchey, New York City Controller Brad Lander, we call out these names because running for office takes ideals, courage, sacrifice, and commitment to the actual processes of democracy. And we want you to know that we know and appreciate you. We are also fortunate to be enjoying the music of the Dior String Quartet, generously organized by the founder of the mostly modern festival in Middelburg, in Zeeland. The festival provides a platform for promising young composers and performers, like our musicians this morning, to exercise the freedom to express themselves musically. We applaud you and thank you for your participation in this celebration of freedom. Being here at these awards is always a very meaningful occasion for me personally, and I think for other family members here today. This was our forebears' home, the landscape they held so dear, the people they felt rooted in, the place they came to recharge. The extraordinary work of the Archives of the United States, today represented by Susan Donius, NARA's executive for legislative archives, and a longtime friend of the FDR Presidential Library. It all began right here. This was the first presidential library. My grandfather created this extremely important government agency because he believed that we will only do better in the future as a democracy if we understand who we have been. Each of my family here today has their own perspective, and not one of us would claim that either of our grandparents was perfect. But every one of us harbors not only love for them, but pride in their courage to confront big challenges, their wisdom, their dignity and integrity, their willingness to learn from mistakes, their determination on behalf of our whole nation and our world, and their deep belief in humanity. Being here reminds us that while authoritarianism and dictatorship hover all too close, out of our midst, leadership can and will emerge from democracy. That is the legacy they have left us. That is the marrow to our bones. That is what fuels every hour and every day of the work we all do, the lives we all lead, the hopes and dreams we all pursue. We are here to celebrate the accomplishments and inspiration of our extraordinary laureates. As you can read in the program, their collective work embodies human freedom and security, shared well-being, and the importance and strength of democracy, all values Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt dedicated their lives to promoting and defending. We welcome these amazing people into the family of laureates and thank them for giving us the confidence that no matter how hard the road ahead, there will always be champions of the people, by the people, and for the people. Their citations will be read and medals presented by guests who are named in your program, with one exception. My granddaughter, Anna Eleanor, is stepping in for Sasha Wong Halprin, who was unable to make it today. And now, I am honored to begin the awards. Would Tracy Hall and Sally Menard join me on the stage? On this, the 23rd day of September 2023, the Franklin D. Roosevelt Freedom of Speech and Expression Medal is awarded to Tracy D. Hall. Libraries are more than their books. They are places of learning, sharing, and community. Now, these institutions are fighting for the intellectual soul of our nation, from school book bans to threats against personnel to public defunding efforts. Tracy Hall, as you said in an interview last year, libraries are relevant when they reflect the needs of the people, and they're even more relevant when they reflect the people. Your words remind us that we all deserve books and resources that speak to our lived experiences, our values, and our identities. Selecting curated, bleached narratives and denying children and adults access to life-altering information is both dangerous and distinctly un-American. Although freedom of speech and expression is protected in the Constitution of the United States, this right remains under threat from those who promote the misguided agendas of the few over the needs of the many. Tracy, you have had a distinguished career. From public librarian to government, to philanthropy, to scholar and keynoter, to the corporate world. You even have a day named after you in Hartford, Connecticut. Your appointment as executive director of the American Library Association, the first Black woman appointed in the ALA's 147-year history, couldn't have come at a more meaningful time, at this crucial juncture, when Black history, this nation's history, is being demonized and freedom of speech is being weaponized. We need leaders like you who act with a deep and informed understanding of contemporary challenges and opportunities. Under your leadership, ALA initiatives such as the Unite Against Book Bans campaign enable those of us who support liberty and literacy for all to protect these ideals for future generations. The politicians and groups enacting censorship measures understand that reading and education changes lives. You understand this power too. and your tireless fight against censorship and support of libraries in prisons exemplifies visionary and truly egalitarian leadership. As a librarian and activist, you lead the courageous struggle against reactionary individuals who want to allow state control of expression, deprive vulnerable people of the means to improve their lives, and ban certain books from public spaces to further their own ends. Since the time of slavery in the United States, oppressive systems and individuals have sought to limit access to literacy and to new ideas. You carry on the legacy of people who have fought for centuries for the right and ability to read, and you do so with passion, wisdom, and dignity. We all owe you and your fellow librarian warriors, as you call them, our gratitude and the gratitude of generations to come. The Roosevelt Institute is honored to present Tracy D. Hall with the 2023 Freedom of Speech and Expression Medal.
I'm not one from crying, but all the tears I've been holding back all my life have suddenly found their way. Before I begin, I look out and I see so many people who are fighting the good fight. And so many people who are fighting the good fight. I thank each of you, and especially my friends and family and my colleagues for being here. And I look out and I wish that there were 4 more people in this audience, and I just want to call their names. My mother, Betty S. Hall, my father, George B. Hall, and my grandparents on both sides. I particularly want to call the name of my grandmother, Bessie Guillard Sanders Scott, who got me my first library card, and my grandfather, Jack Scott, who would sometimes take the truck to pick me up when there were too many books to carry home by hand. Congressman John Lewis, a previous recipient of this medal, predicted that access to the internet and to information more broadly would be the civil rights issue of the 21st century. His foresight was extraordinary. This is the same John Lewis whose introduction to activism came at age 16 when he fought to gain access to a segregated public library in Troy, Alabama. Even at that tender age, Lewis understood that the kinetic knowledge contained in libraries was too valuable to be denied. What would Mr. Lewis say about the moment we find ourselves in today? A moment when books are being censored and removed from public access, when the constitutional right to read is being contested, and libraries, as guarantors of that right, are being increasingly attacked. In the past year, over a dozen verified bomb threats have shut down school and public libraries across the country, all because the libraries adhere to the vision that inspired their establishment nearly 200 years ago. That libraries could and should inform and affirm us as a people by providing a place for the collection and dissemination of all our dreams and stories. Censorship is a dangerous and slippery slope. It is an incendiary tactic rooted not so much in the desire to protect as to control. To add kindling to the fire, we are also in a period when 43 million adults, 1 out of 5 in most areas, 2 out of 5 adults in our rural and disinvested urban areas are unable to read above a 5th grade level. The connection between these realities is stark but clear. Books and ideas are being increasingly portrayed as dangerous to a citizenry that has not or cannot read them. This is a perfect storm, made more potent by the ways in which the act of policing reading and normalizing low adult literacy has taken on an air of paternalism, co-opting words like safety and liberty. But what we know is this: wherever we are denied the right to read and interpret information for ourselves, we are neither safe nor free. Where we are denied the freedom to write and to read our stories and lived experiences, we are neither safe nor free. But in these times, where a vocal minority would seek to assert themselves in usurping the inalienable rights imparted to every one of us, I take heart in this: that when we as a nation are given the opportunity to speak for ourselves, we, regardless of demographic or political party, still see censorship and the denial of the right to read as unconstitutional and un-American. And I also take heart that those who care for them the most and work most closely with them understand that who this is really hurting most of all are our youth. A fact that they clearly see themselves, judging from the letters I'm receiving from young people expressing their own concern about censorship. Young people like Sadie, a middle schooler who just last week wrote me an impassioned reminder, and I'm quoting her, that we should be living in a country where people are allowed to read what they want and filter books for themselves. Book banning is bad. End of quote. Sadie, yes. Book banning is bad, but I promise you this: we will not let it be your inheritance. The test of any true democracy is this: that free people read freely. Our strength and our future as a country rests on those 4 words, words that are being sorely tested but cannot be allowed to fail. Those words are the North Star for librarians all across this country and the librarians in this room. Raise your hand. I thank the Roosevelt Institute for this honor, which I accept on behalf and only on behalf of the heroic membership and staff of the American Library Association. And the librarians, library workers, some of them who have lost their jobs and livelihoods in defense of freedom of speech and the right to read. I share this award as well with every library trustee, library advocate, and library user everywhere. This award recognizes the essential and unduplicated role that libraries and librarianship play in the maintenance of freedom. We must unite against book bans. We must unite against censorship. We must preserve access to information and the right to read freely as human rights. And we must, and I say this unselfishly, we must preserve libraries as a public institution that ensures these rights. We must preserve libraries. If we allow our libraries to be discredited, to be defunded, to be displaced, we will become a city without walls. Indeed, Mr. Lewis, access to information has become the civil rights issue of the 21st century. And in the threat of censorship and the social repression it seeks to create, we face, as you did before us, a mighty bridge to cross. But like you, Mr. Lewis, we will not turn back. We will make it to the other side with the words, "Free people read freely. Free people read freely. Free people read freely," ringing high above our heads.
Truly a pleasure and an honor to be here today. And what a fantastic speech, by the way. That was truly lovely. Almost 250 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, conversations about how to achieve a functional and equitable democracy continue to evolve. Historically, Black people in the United States had to force ourselves into the dialogue when those who inherited power have sought to exclude us and deprive us of our agency. Dr. Fluker, you are an example of why we must maintain not only our agency in these discussions, but also our morals and ethics. As you write in Ethical Leadership, The Quest for Character, Civility, and Community, quote, "The Black church tradition, at its best, is an argument about the meaning and destiny of American democratic dogma," close quote. The Black church, as an institution, offers an invaluable forum for understanding dissent and earnest discourse around race in this country. And theology and freedom of religion hold a central place in democracy beyond this context. At Morehouse College, Boston University, and Emory University, you have translated Howard Thurman and Martin Luther King Jr.'s teachings for new audiences and have diligently upheld their work on nonviolence in the 21st century. Thurman advised King on nonviolent philosophy, and as a mentor to students at these institutions, you carry on their dialogues around race and worship, living out, in your words, their gospel of peace, justice, and love. You lead by example a larger conversation about faith, American post-racialism, and what it means to be Black in this country. Your writings on ethics continue to ground emerging thinkers and leaders in achievable ideals of character, civility, and community. You have also played a profound role in my own life, from inspiring me to attend Morehouse to continuing to mentor me long after graduation. I have learned so much from your guidance, both personally and professionally, especially about looking inward and caring for myself spiritually. I know you have also positively shaped the lives of countless others. Across the diaspora, we are grateful for your integrity, scholarship, and leadership. We all have so much to learn from you. Thank you for your insistence that productive dialogue about race and freedom of worship are both essential to American democracy. Thank you for reminding us that all Black people and people of all faiths and identities are vital to these conversations. The Roosevelt Institute is honored to present Dr. Walter Earl Fluker with the 2023 Freedom of Worship Medal.
Thank you, Mr. Tope Faloran. The best of Morehouse College and one of the most critical leaders for these new generations of democratic ambassadors to the world. To Miss Ann Roosevelt, to Dr. Felicia Wong, to my hero, Madam Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, my fellow 2023 laureates, Miss Dynamic Tracy Hall, Representative Benny Thompson, and all of our heroes come together in one person, Mr. Artie Barkan. Thank you. Just a moment to pause to thank all of my family and friends who are here, those who are live streaming, and those who are in the room. But most of all, I give thanks to my beloved, who makes my sun rise. Please stand, honey, I'm Baptist. I accept this honor on behalf of my parents. Tracy is contagious. Mississippi sharecroppers who taught me the words of a simple prayer. Now lay me down to sleep. Yes. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Simple, elegant, and profound. Yet my parents' simple faith ennobled and grounded them in a personal assurance and a sense of ultimate security, despite restraints on their other freedoms of speech, want, and fear. This prayer captured the mystery of what theologians like to call infinite freedom. Infinite freedom that is wrapped up in our finitude. You know, democracy at its best is a human construction founded on spiritual and ethical associations in the quest for this infinite freedom. It is this one infinitesimal space that no one can touch unless we yield to them the fluid center of our consent. In this space of infinite freedom lies the power of faith. It was my parents' freedom of faith and their faith in freedom that made it possible for me to be here with you today. My enslaved ancestors put this complex philosophical and ethical idea in a song. They would sing, "Oh freedom over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free." One of the most remarkable and salient dimensions of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's 1941 speech is that he so intricately and intimately tied these four freedoms together so that one does not stand without the other. The freedom of worship, therefore, calls us into ethical accountability to work towards the end where we are all free to speak, free from want and free from fear. So as we gather today, when the storm clouds are gathering over sometimes our precarious yet precious experiment in democracy, we have varying levels and degrees of these freedoms based upon law, legislation, power, historical and social locations. But yet we know that as long as there are people in the world who do not experience the fullness of these freedoms, we can never be free, especially those who suffer daily from injustice, inequity, and all manner of evil. It was Martin Luther King Jr. who spoke so eloquently to this idea in these immortal words: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. This is why my ancestors, and perhaps some of yours, sang another song that asked a very provocative question. They asked, is you got good religion? Good religion. Not everybody has good religion in this country today. But good religion works for freedom and equality without transgressing on the freedom of the other to worship as they choose. That is, if that worship is grounded in the dignity and worth of personality. It was my mentor, Howard Thurman, who framed this perspective in clear and poetic terms. He writes, the things that are true in any religious experience are to be found in that religious experience precisely because they are true. They are not true simply because they are found in that religious experience. And then he goes on and says, around any road, at any turning, a person may come upon the burning bush and hear the voice saying, take off your shoes, because the place where you are now standing is a holy place, even though you did not know it. My friends, we're standing and sitting on holy ground. This is the peculiar and distinctive role of the freedom of good religion. And I wish that some of my contemporaries would understand that this good religion ushers us to holy ground, the holy ground of the other in all of her difference and all of her magnificence. And it calls us forth to work for justice that seeks compassion. Good religion is the glue that holds the etiquette of democracy together. So indeed, in closing, I accept this high honor, and I promise to embrace it with all of my heart and all of my soul and all of my strength. In the words of Howard Thurman, you have placed a crown above my head that I shall spend the rest of my days trying to grow tall enough to wear it. God bless you.
Good morning. My name is Brian Wolf. I'm proud board member at the Roosevelt Institute, and I'm pleased to present to my friend Audie Barkan with this medal, the Freedom from Want Medal. But first, we're going to hear a message from Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Hi, everyone. I am so sorry that I couldn't join you in person for this year's Four Freedoms Awards ceremony, but I am so glad to have the chance to be here virtually with all of you to celebrate Audie Barkan. Wow. I want to thank you so much, Roosevelt Institute, for the invitation to join you today. To my good friend Audie, congratulations on receiving the Freedom from Want Medal. You know, Audie and I go way back, and that means I've seen him pick a lot of really good fights. For years now, he's been at the forefront of the fight for health justice, pushing for lasting change so that everyone in America gets the care they need. Audie's fought through ALS, Big Pharma, special interests, and politicians who have tried to stop his progress. And thanks to his persistence, he hasn't just been in the fight. He's been leading these fights and helping win them. Audie's advocacy stopped Republican efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. You know, let me just say it again. He was on the front lines when the Republicans got down to one vote to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And Audie was there to beat them back. He's been fighting hard to reclaim Medicare from greedy private insurance companies. And he's been pushing to pass Medicare for all. He's also pushing for the necessary investments in direct care workforce to expand home and community-based care. You know, that's an amazing list. It's real change with real impact. And that's Audie. Audie inspires us with his perseverance, with his perspective, and with his grit. Millions of Americans across this country owe Audie a big thank you. So, Audie, congratulations again on such a well-deserved award. I am so glad to have you as a friend and partner in our big righteous fights. Woohoo.
Audie Barkan, fighting the good fight through strategic collective action, political accountability, initiatives such as the Fed Up campaign, and avid support for Medicare for all. You have fought tirelessly for equitable systems that enable people to live their fullest, healthiest lives. Like President Roosevelt himself, you have led with a condition that many would view as a deficit. Yet you continue to prove that a disability does not limit a person's contributions to society. Your colleagues are fortunate to work alongside you in this fight for change, hope, and justice. And in your enduring words from the documentary, Not Going Quietly, that's the beauty of democracy, that together we can be more than our individual selves. The Roosevelt Institute is honored to present Audie Barkan with the 2023 Freedom of Want Medal.
Thank you very much. It is particularly meaningful to receive this award alongside Nancy Pelosi. I would not be here today, I would not be anywhere, if it were not for my beloved caregivers, who tend to me every hour of every day. 3 of them brought me across the continent, and I am so grateful to Izzy, Robert, and Drea for everything they do. With me also is my wife, Rachel. We will celebrate 18 years together next week. Every year has been an adventure, and coming to New York this week, especially with our two perfect angels, Carl and Willow, is wonderful evidence that new adventures still await us, and that staying in the struggle can bring beautiful rewards. I am grateful also to the Roosevelt Institute for giving me this honor. It comes in a poignantly coincidental year. In 1921, Franklin Roosevelt was 39 years old. He was on vacation when he suddenly became ill, and quickly paralyzed from the waist down. Today, I am also 39 years old. And also, if I am open with you about it, I too am paralyzed from the waist down. But, unlike Franklin, I got the bonus extra paralysis, from the head to the waist as well. FDR never was open about his paralysis. Indeed, for much of the 1920s, he refused to accept his fate. He lived in Florida and Georgia, seeking out warmth and therapeutic waters to regain his ability to walk, seeing legitimate doctors and quacks alike. Nothing worked. So in 1928, he ran for governor of New York, and won. In January 1941, 20 years after his paralysis, just having won his third term as president, Roosevelt gave his State of the Union address, arguing that the United States must support the British war effort against Germany, and laying out a vision for a post-war world based on 4 freedoms. When Roosevelt described the freedom from want, he used one, and only one metric to explain what that phrase meant. Health. He said, quote, "The third is freedom from want," which, translated into world terms, means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy, peacetime life for its inhabitants, everywhere in the world. End quote. Thus, FDR's experience teaches us a profound lesson about dealing with personal tragedy and about the choices we make about how we spend our time on this earth. It was only after he gave up trying to walk again, only after he gave up trying to regain his personal health, only, in fact, after he found his own personal freedom from wanting to walk again, it was only then, that he could return to New York, return to his vocation of politics, and become the champion for the freedom of people across America and around the world. It is for that personal courage and fortitude, in addition to his moral clarity and leadership, that the rest of us can, to this day, still aspire to roll in the tracks that he laid. It is a privilege to be with you today, and to work together to build the world that FDR imagined for future generations. Thank you.
I'm Chuck Muckenfuss, former board member and hope to be soon board member of the Roosevelt Institute. I guess I would have to note one thing that's not on the script, which is that a little white boy in Montgomery, Alabama, in 1947 or 48, was taught that same simple prayer. I'm not sure what to make of it, and I questioned the appropriateness of a white boy making this particular citation, but maybe there's some connection. On January 6, 2021, 80 years to the day since FDR's original Four Freedoms Address, the United States Capitol suffered an assault from within our borders. As we reckon with these events and other threats to our nation and to our democracy, we must remember these words from President Roosevelt. Any oppression, any injustice, any hatred is a wedge designed to attack our civilization. As chairman of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol, Congressman Benny Thompson assumed the immense responsibility of addressing just such an unimaginable attack. Through his dedication to the established processes of our nation, as well as to the expressed will of all American people, he set an enduring precedent and example of commitment to the rule of law and justice. Congressman Thompson has set the standard for answering efforts to divide us with unbiased accountability. His bipartisan leadership of the January 6th Committee in pursuit of fair, impartial justice reflects some of our government's best qualities and ideals: a collaborative spirit, a reliance on evidence, and the dedication to the truth. Further, he continues to protect the best interest of his district, his state, and the nation as Mississippi's 2nd District Representative. Since 1993, his work in the House of Representatives has honored his heritage as a son of Mississippi. The actions we take and who we become in response to tests to our laws and procedures will shape our country for generations to come. Congressman Thompson's efforts and convictions have led the way and provided an example. Through his undying courage in the face of threats and opposition, he has upheld his oath to defend the Constitution and our democracy from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And his continued leadership reminds the world that the American experiment can set a standard of unbiased accountability and due process. The Roosevelt Institute is pleased to present the Honorable Benny Thompson with the 2023 Freedom from Fear Medal.
Good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to express my profound gratitude for being honored with the Freedom from Fear Award by the Roosevelt Institute. This recognition is not only a deeply personal honor, but also a testament to the enduring spirit of democracy and the tireless efforts of countless individuals who strive to uphold the core values that our nation was built upon. On the cusp of receiving this award, it is both humbling and inspiring. As I reflect on the journey that has led me to this moment, I'm reminded of the words and legacy of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, individuals who dared to envision a world where freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear were not just ideals, but guiding principles for a just society. I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the Roosevelt Institute for its unwavering dedication to preserving the legacy of Franklin D. Roosevelt, and for recognizing individuals who've shown exceptional leadership and courage in the face of challenges. This award holds a special place in my heart, and it acknowledges the collective efforts of all those who work tirelessly to protect our democracy and uphold the values that define us as a nation. I'm particularly honored to be recognized for my role as chair of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. This moment in our history was a stark reminder of the fragility of our democracy and the importance of holding those who threaten it accountable. It is a reminder that the struggle for freedom from fear is ongoing, and it requires the dedication and unity of individuals who believe in the promise of America. I would also like to extend my appreciation to the Franklin D. Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum for its enduring commitment to preserving history and inspiring future generations. Your work reminds us that the lessons of the past can guide us toward a better future, and I'm honored to be associated with an institution that shares these values. I'm reminded that this honor is not just about me. It's about the power of collective action, the resilience of our democracy, and the hope for a brighter future. Let us continue to champion the values that make us who we are, and let us work together to ensure that freedom from fear is a reality for all. Thank you once again for this incredible honor and for your unwavering commitment to a better tomorrow.
Good morning into afternoon. What a glorious morning it's been. Before I introduce someone, my father, his hero, I just want to say on behalf of my father, William Vanden Heuvel, he would have adored today, he would have loved today. He spent the last decades of his life ensuring a commitment to the Roosevelt legacy would be part of our life, and I think it's ever more important. He would also love the Dutch delegation. I gather that Zeeland has been emptied out. But he really believed in the dialogue between the Netherlands and this country, having his parents come in 1926 from Zeeland. But my honor today is to introduce Speaker Pelosi, who needs no introduction. So 15 years ago, I had the pleasure of interviewing you about your first book, Know Your Power, A Message to America's Daughters. One of them is here, Alexandra. On that July day in 2008, no one knew that the world was about to be turned on its head, that Lehman Brothers would collapse just 2 months later and trigger a financial emergency, that we would go through the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. We didn't know then that we'd experience a pandemic during your speakership, or that we'd bear witness to an attack on our Capitol in those same House chambers where we spoke. But on that day, you knew your power. You knew what you wanted to give priority to: jobs, healthcare, climate, democracy. And as you've proven time and time again, you knew how to get the job done. You came to Congress in 1987 and served your home district brilliantly, a brilliance that was recognized as you gradually moved up in leadership, a brilliance that was probably out of Baltimore and your father's great experience as mayor and as a New Deal advocate. And in 2007, you became the first woman to serve as Speaker of the House. At your swearing in, you called the House to order on behalf of all of America's children, children like Willow and Curl. Since then, and in spite of relentless attacks on you personally, your husband, you've worked tirelessly to secure a brighter, better future for all in the American public. And over a span of 4 presidencies, you became the most accomplished speaker we've ever had. I want to speak to what Adi said it well. He said it perfectly. When all hope seemed lost in 2010, you steered the Affordable Care Act to passage, and 40 million more people. If you want to see tenacity and persistence, watch Alexandra Pelosi's film, Nancy Pelosi on the Phone. At the height of the Great Recession and in the depths of COVID, you helped rescue the American economy and create millions of jobs. And last year, with the clock ticking on climate change, you made the most of a narrow legislative window and secured the most significant climate investments in our nation's history. And if you're keeping count, that's 3 for 3 on your priorities list. And it only touches the surface of all that you've achieved throughout your career and all the ways you've made life better for the American people. Speaker Pelosi, you have lived a life of firsts. You have led the House through history. Your savvy guts and fighting spirit have made change happen. And as assaults on our democracy come home, closer to home, you have worked without rest and with tremendous courage to safeguard our freedoms. We are grateful, and I'm honored to present you with the 2023 Freedom Medal.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure I'll be able to do justice to this award that I've received because I've been in tears almost all morning listening to these beautiful presentations. It is an honor to receive this award. To receive it for Katrina means a great deal to me because of her relentless, persistent, dissatisfied insistence on democracy and liberty and justice for all. I love that she referenced her father, and I want to call your attention to the first in the book, read about her father, Ambassador William van den Heuvel, and obviously she follows in his tradition. Thank you. And again, thank you, dear, for getting this award to hear. You know, I want to just acknowledge first this thrill that it is for me to receive this award. It's official, but it's very personal as well. But first I want to say how honored I am to receive it with Tracy Hall. I told Tracy earlier that my first official position was to be a library commissioner in San Francisco. So everything that she said was so meaningful, especially quoting John Lewis, whom I served with. We were in the same class together, came to Congress together, and it was such an honor to serve with him and to hear you put it in those words about the civil rights issue. I also want to just say, when you talked about books, when it was mentioned in the presentation about books for people in prison, it reminded me of the Gospel of Matthew. When I was in prison, you visited me. So beautiful, important, and again, about freedom of speech, which is the biggest defender of our democracy officially. Of course, our military, but the freedom of to speak, to write, is so much. So congratulations to you, my fellow commissioner of the library. And again, Dr. Flocke, he said things that we have said in the Italian American neighborhood in Baltimore, Maryland, about when at night I go to sleep. But he spoke so beautifully about faith and its relationship to freedom, so beautifully. And it's an honor to receive the award with you, Dr. Flocke. And I look forward to now we're in a sister and brotherhood here, continuing that relationship. Adi Barkan, I'm so embarrassed that you talked about me at the beginning of your remarks, because everything you said about me, I could project back to you. I wish you could have all heard Adi speak to members of Congress about the necessity of health care in our country. So moving, so inspirational, so pragmatic, so forceful. Nobody said it better than Adi Barkan. And then again, as time went by, Adi's experience even had more weight from from where he was speaking from. And then when Carl came along, and then Willow, oh my gosh, they were such a joy to all of us, a manifestation of love and courage and commitment to the future. Adi has an initiative, be a hero. Adi, you are our hero, so over and over again. Thank you. I love you. I'm so excited to receive the award with you, as I'm sure our colleagues are. When you see Benny Thompson speak and we praise him for his leadership and the rest, you have to know how deep it goes. When we established a while back after 9/11 the Homeland Security Committee, I had the privilege of putting Benny in line to be the chair of it. And as the chair of it, he fought, he taught, he tried to lead people to understand the horror of domestic terrorism in our country. But he didn't want to be a bearer of bad news, but it was fact. And then it came to be on January 6th, as was indicated, 80 years to the day of the Forum for Freedom's speech. So when it was time to name who would chair that select committee, it was very clear that it would be our champion in this, Benny Thompson, in this regard. And what you should know, you saw what he did. Actually, before we even had the committee, he orchestrated in the House legislation to have a bipartisan outside commission, which was accepted by the Senate, except it was rejected in the vote in the Senate, because he did so many things beyond what you saw on TV. But I was telling some friends last night, including Dr. Fluker, that after it was all over, and we were very proud of it, we knew exactly what we wanted it to do, what its mission was, what its presentation was, what its values were, what its justice was. But after it was over, Adam Schiff came to me, who was on the commission. He said, "You understand that we would not have had the unity and the clarity without the chairmanship of Benny Thompson." So it's deeper than what you might think. So deserving of it, so deserving it all. Now, again, Anna Roosevelt, we all come together every year in Washington with the Roosevelt Institute. Some of our friends in labor are there. I know Jim Hava is here, who is, are you there, Jimmy? But I just say him because it's not him, but the labor movement, so important to it all. Anna Roosevelt is a visionary leader. She's someone we go to learn, for advice, for inspiration. And as we heard from her beautiful remarks earlier, carrying on the values of her grandparents. And wasn't it lovely to see her granddaughter give the ribbon? She gave it to you, Dr. Fluker, multi-generational. Speaking of family, I want to acknowledge my daughter Alexandra is here with her husband, the Dutchman, Michiel Voss, here as my son-in-law. Secondarily, first of all, as part of the Dutch delegation to this meeting. And Michiel Voss. And speaking of the Dutch delegation, what an honor it is to be with all of you. But Katrina, when people found out I was getting this award, you hear all kinds of stories. And one of them, apropos of the Dutch being here and the pride that you take in your heritage, was somebody told me this story. They said President Roosevelt was invited to speak at this event, and it was going to be unfriendly to his pro-immigration attitude. I'm not going to name the organization, but the president went into the, and he began his speech by saying, "Good evening, fellow immigrants." So welcome to the manifestation of his immigrant status as the Dutch who are here today. It is, again, Felicia Wong, I want to commend you for the wonderful work that you do as masterful leadership of the Roosevelt Institute, a pillar of progress for working people. Thank you. Was referenced earlier, the landscape of this place, the whisper of the wind, the rustle of the leaves, the beauty and majesty of the vistas, the quiet strength of the Hudson River, and the recharging of the Roosevelts coming here. And it is alive in the eyes of children who come here to learn about our 32nd President and First Lady, children who will grow up in a world that Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt helped to make freer and fairer. I was thinking as I was coming here about some comments I wanted to make personally and officially, but also just think, and then dispel it from your mind because it's a horrible thought, what our country would be without the presidency and the leadership of Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt. What they did was miraculous, was transformative in every way, saving us from the Great Depression, bringing us to a place to save the country, for the world, for democracy and the rest. Think of what they did and the values that they had to make sure they were lifting everyone up as they did it. What would our country be like without the presidency of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt? Now dispel that from your mind because it's a horrible thought. I said it's a personal thing. My father, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., he was mayor of Baltimore a long time, but before that he was in Congress, New Deal, Democrat in the Roosevelt administration, worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt, worshipped at the shrine of him. And how much did he worship? He named my brother Franklin Roosevelt D'Alessandro. You don't have too many Italians with that name, but he was. And we always had a gigantic picture of Franklin Roosevelt in our home, and we used to measure how tall we were getting against that picture. Now we measure how decent we are in relationship to that presidency. It is incredible part of his life and our families that my father was in Congress that day, January 6th, 1991, when the president made the Four Freedoms speech. So you can just imagine how thrilling this is for me. And again, he was taking America to a different place, away from isolationism. Away from isolation. Later that year, they would hear from Winston Churchill as the president's guest speaking to the Congress, asking for help. But President Franklin Roosevelt prepared the way for that. Imagine the challenge, a world war, that he had to prepare America to be less isolationist and more assuming our responsibilities. As we gather here, our country is challenged once again. And we had this remarkable example of leadership all those years ago, now over 82 years ago. And to think of, more than 82 years ago. When you think of the value of that speech, freedom from want. I have all these Norman Rockwell memorabilia, but when we went to the 75th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy, they at the same time had the Norman Rockwell presentation at the museum right nearby in Normandy. And you see those pictures of prayer and of food and of freedom, and it's just so remarkable, inspired by this president, presented in an artful way to reach the hearts of people as the president reached hearts and minds and to change them in our country. So to be identified in any way with the Roosevelt Institute is an incredible honor. To receive this award is something that is, especially now, because in the struggle we're facing now, we hear echoes of the fight that Franklin Roosevelt himself once confronted, rallying our nation and the world to confront a murderous tyrant who sought to conquer his neighbors. Today, we are inspired by that heroic leadership as we again come to the aid of freedom fighters who are repelling not only an invasion of their homeland, the Ukrainians, but an assault on democracy. Their fight for democracy is the fight for our democracy, all democracy. And Franklin Roosevelt knew then, and we know now, that we must never fail to fight a sinister force of oppression, because the threat to, as you said earlier, a threat to democracy anywhere is a threat to democracy everywhere. In the a moment of darkness, the Roosevelts offered a beacon of light. Soaring in his oration, imagine the beauty of his eloquence. Tenacious in his persuasion, inspiring in his determination, he united a nation in common cause. Indeed, as he counseled the Congress in his Four Freedoms address, our strength and our unity is our unity of purpose. Our strength is our unity of purpose. To that high concept, there could be no end save victory. Today, our task remains the same: to unify our nation, to fight for freedom, to weather the tempest of tyranny, and to give proof through the night. Now, this is now you've had songs, so I think I should inject it. And isn't the Dior Quartet just wonderful? Thank you so much. Before I came to Congress, and by the way, that was 36 years ago, I want to thank Brian Wolf for helping me get to Congress at that time. He's like family to us and is on the board of the Roosevelt Institute. And my colleague, Pat Ryan, I don't know if Pat is still here. I know we had a Pat Ryan way back. And Michelle Hinchy. Michelle, I don't know if Michelle is still here, but I had the privilege of honoring her father, whom I had the honor of serving with in Congress for many years as well, Maurice Hinchy. So let me just say, I told you about the picture in our home, but I have the picture all through my leadership and through speakership, and still now as Speaker Emerita. You know, Emerita means happiness, but anyway. I have this picture of Eleanor Roosevelt in my office. It is a picture of her with my father, who was at the time the chair of the District of Columbia Appropriations Subcommittee. She came to his subcommittee to testify, the first lady in history to testify before Congress. And she testified to the needs of the poor people in Washington, D.C., and the conditions of St. Elizabeth's Welfare Hospital there. It was just, again, meeting the very specific needs. You should see how beautiful she looks. Come see me, I'll show you the picture. So whether it was Eleanor, Franklin, my father, our family, it was just, this is overwhelming for me. So songs. So the national anthem was written in Baltimore, Maryland. That's where I was originally from. And I love the national anthem. People think it's too militant and they want to change it. No, it's Baltimore, Maryland, so it can be. And you know, when you're at the game and you get toward the end and they start to cheer at the end, well, I cheer earlier. And this is what I want to tell you. When it says, and proof through the night that our flag was still there. That's what we have to do now. We're in a period of some night, some darkness, and we have to prove through this night that our flag is still there with liberty and justice for all, as we pledged earlier, and what Carl told me, he said, I say that every day in school, with liberty and justice for all. And that's so much about what Eleanor and Franklin were about. Thank you again for bestowing this Freedom Medal. I accept everything on behalf of my colleagues whose courage made everything we ever did possible. It's easy for me, representing San Francisco, to take certain actions, but for them to make the vote, it takes courage and to know the unity as the president said, the unity of our purpose as to why we are there, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Roosevelt Institute, for this wonderful, wonderful honor. I don't know.
Good afternoon. Wow, I get to go last. My name is Felicia Wong, and I'm so glad to see each of you here this afternoon. I really do have the great good fortune, it is the honor and the privilege of a lifetime, to lead the Roosevelt Institute. My colleagues and I am so happy to see so many of them here today. My colleagues and I, we have a job, which is to make the legacy of Franklin and Eleanor real today. We work really hard to rewrite the rules of our economy, to persuade the most powerful people in our country that a more equitable and a more just and a more democratic economy is possible. And we could not be more proud that many of the ideas we've been dreaming of over the past 10 or so years, those ideas are now a reality. Our government can structure our markets so that they are more fair. Our government can set our economic North Star. It can be high care and it can be low carbon. Our economy can become more democratic, not stratified, not unequal, but democratic. And so a lot of us wrote down these ideas a few short years ago, lots of white papers, lots of testimony before Congress. But now, many of these ideas are the law of the land. And our ceremony today reminds me of why we do our work. I'm so glad that we were reminded of Adi Barkan's words, which is that the beauty of democracy is that together we can be more than our individual selves. We know it's not easy. We know it's often extraordinarily frightening. Really frightening. Many of us have been frightened. But we know, thanks to Eleanor Roosevelt, that, and I quote, "Courage is more exhilarating than fear, and in the long run, it's easier." We don't have to become heroes overnight, just one step at a time. Meeting each thing that comes up, seeing that it's not as dreadful as it first appeared, and discovering that we have the strength to stare it down. Each of our laureates today, Tracy Hall, Dr. Fluker, Adi Barkan, Representative Benny Thompson, and of course, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, each of you know this in the marrow of your bones, as my friend and my board chair, Ann Roosevelt, says. Your lives show us that democracy is moral, that it requires judgment and wisdom, and that as long as each of us, as imperfect as we are, as long as each of us does the best we can and brings others along with us, our nation will continue our work of becoming, one day, a true democracy. So thanks to each of you for being with us today. You know, it's really remarkable that you all came from so far to celebrate an idea, the four freedoms. In particular, I'd like to thank the Roosevelt Institute Board of Directors. You are all such amazing sources of support and wisdom. Thank you to the FDR Library trustees, chaired by Nancy Roosevelt Ireland, for your commitment to this place and to its legacy. Thanks to Amy Bracewell and the National Park Service, such wonderful partners, to our NARA team and to all of us who work on the nonprofit side. Thanks to Jennifer O'Neill, our amazing event planner, who has been, you said making it up as you went along today. Well, you've made it up just beautifully. And thanks to Lauren Karyaganis and Juliette Kang-Stableski, who oversaw every single detail, seating chart after seating chart, run of show, after run of show. You did all of this while still closing scores of funding commitments to make sure that the Roosevelt Institute can continue to rewrite the rules. And of course, thank you to Bill Harris. Where are you, Bill? Thank you to Bill Harris. You know, you run the best presidential library, Bill. And you get to, yeah, you do. And you get to honor the best president. So thank you to you and your remarkable staff, because you make sure that we seek the truth and that we tell the truth, even when that is hard, because that is what democracy requires. So thanks, Bill, and thanks all of the library team for being such wonderful hosts today. And with that, our 2023 For Freedom ceremony has come to a close. I want to thank you all again for being here. And please, for those of you who have tickets to the luncheon, you're welcome to join us in the tent through the mist outside. Thank you so very much.